8-year-old Jennifer Schuett suffered a horrific ordeal, being kidnapped, assaulted, and left for dead. Miraculously, she survived despite sustaining severe injuries that rendered her speechless, but her memory remained intact. Years later, Jennifer would play a pivotal role in solving her own case, bringing an end to her attacker's notorious reign of terror. In the quaint town of Dickinson, Texas, Jennifer lived with her single mother, Ellen, in a modest apartment situated in a troubled neighborhood. On August 9, 1990, at 2:30 a.m., Ellen made an unusual request for Jennifer to retire to her own room, as she needed an early start the next morning. Jennifer complied, reading until she drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Ellen's frantic search for Jennifer yielded a chilling discovery. Her bedroom window was wide open, and her daughter was nowhere to be found. It became apparent to responding officers that Jennifer's disappearance was no ordinary runaway case. The investigation began immediately, with authorities launching a thorough search. Later that day, at 6:30 p.m., local authorities received a distressing call from parents whose children had stumbled upon a lifeless body in a nearby field. The gruesome discovery revealed the badly injured body of a young girl, later identified as Jennifer Schuett. Time was of the essence as emergency responders rushed Jennifer to the hospital, her survival hanging precariously in the balance. Her severe injuries included a throat slit from ear to ear, suggesting a possible sexual assault. The brutality of the attack was so extreme that hospital staff barred Jennifer's mother from entering her room, shielding her from the traumatic sight. Miraculously, Jennifer's attacker had missed the major arteries in her neck, sparing her life. News of the heinous crime sent shockwaves through Dickinson, Texas, leaving the small community reeling. Jennifer's mother was beside herself with worry. When Jennifer regained consciousness post-surgery, her behavior underwent a dramatic shift. The Dickinson Police Department assigned a team to guard her hospital room, but the constant presence of male doctors and staff triggered intense panic in Jennifer, plunging her into a state of persistent distress. In Jennifer's eyes, everyone was a potential suspect. Notably, she exhibited an unusual wariness towards police officers, a detail that would later gain significance as her story unfolded. Initially unable to communicate verbally with investigators, Jennifer relied on writing to convey her experiences. With notebook and pen in hand, she began sharing crucial information, primarily through notes passed to her mother, who then relayed them to the officers outside. Despite being only 8 years old, Jennifer demonstrated remarkable intelligence and attention to detail. Her written accounts provided vivid insights into the traumatic events. According to Jennifer's written testimony, she fell asleep in her bedroom, but awoke in the arms of an unfamiliar person. The stranger reassured her, falsely claiming to be a police officer and urging her to remain calm. He then transported her in a car, holding her on his lap. It was at this point that Jennifer's instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. Jennifer's understanding of the police as the good guys clashed with the stranger danger warnings she had learned, creating a deep-seated distrust, especially towards male authorities. To alleviate her fears, the assailant pulled into the local elementary school parking lot, assuring her they would wait for her mother to arrive at sunrise. However, his actions, smoking, drinking, and offering candies, raised stark red flags, eerily mirroring the warning signs taught in child safety programs. As doubts crept in, the man's ominous words echoed, "Well, your mum's not coming." He restarted the car, driving Jennifer outside town to a secluded field. There, her questions were met with silence. Upon regaining consciousness, Jennifer found herself being dragged naked by her ankle through the field. Demonstrating remarkable instincts, she pretended to be dead, recognizing it as her sole chance for survival. The ruse worked. Her attacker dropped her legs and walked away, leaving her for dead on an anthill. Jennifer's capacity for quick thinking and resilience in the face of unimaginable horror is staggering, considering her tender age. As sunrise approached, Jennifer heard the reassuring sounds of children playing and dogs barking nearby. She tried to scream but couldn't. Instead, she summoned the strength to cover her neck with her right hand, only to see it drenched in blood. Drifting in and out of consciousness, Jennifer's resolve remained unwavering. Fire ants biting her kept her awake, and she clung to the details of her ordeal, determined to bring her attacker to justice if she survived. Remarkably, Jennifer had extracted crucial information from her captor during their car ride, including his name, Dennis. A sketch artist was brought in to translate her memories into a usable police lead. Despite her inability to speak, Jennifer conveyed her descriptions through notes. With her guidance, a composite sketch was created, but unfortunately it didn't yield immediate results. The police's public appeal and search only turned up scattered clothing from Jennifer and her attacker in the field. Frustrated and angry, Jennifer struggled to express her discontent, her silence exacerbating her emotions. It was then that a remarkable breakthrough occurred. During one of Jennifer's frustrated, silent outbursts, a faint sound unexpectedly escaped her lips. Medical professionals were astonished as her severely damaged vocal cords, nearly severed in two, were deemed irreparable. Defying expectations, her vocal cords began to heal, and Jennifer regained her voice while still hospitalized. Following her miraculous recovery, Jennifer returned home and bravely resumed her education the next year. However, re-entering the world after such a traumatic experience proved daunting. The entire town of Dickinson remained on edge, sharing Jennifer's trauma as the community grappled with the unknown identity of her attacker. In response to the heightened anxiety, local law enforcement bolstered their presence, deploying additional officers to schoolyards and classrooms. Despite initial urgency, leads gradually grew cold, and Jennifer's case languished for 18 long years without significant progress. Then, a phone call brought renewed hope. Detective Tim Cromie would be re-examining her case and requested a meeting. This development marked the beginning of a fresh investigation, rekindling Jennifer's pursuit of justice. The meeting with Detective Tim Cromie marked a turning point for Jennifer. His unwavering commitment, "I'll do everything in my power until the end of my career to get you the answers you need," instilled hope and transformed her outlook. Detective Cromie enlisted the Federal Bureau of Investigation's expertise, revisiting evidence from 18 years prior, including clothing found in the field. Time, though frustrating, had brought advancements in DNA technology. A year-long process unfolded, but ultimately proved fruitful. At 2:30 a.m., the DNA lab called, revealing a breakthrough. The Federal Bureau of Investigation had matched a name to the DNA evidence, Dennis Earl Bradford. This revelation corroborated Jennifer's childhood notes, astonishingly accurate despite her age, pain medication, and speechlessness at the time. Her insistence that her attacker's name was Dennis had been dismissed as a fragile lead. Now, it stood as a testament to her resilience. Investigations revealed 39-year-old Dennis Earl Bradford from Arkansas had been released from prison merely 6 months after Jennifer's abduction, having served time for another kidnapping. This chilling connection underscored the gravity of Jennifer's case and the significance of Detective Cromie's tireless efforts. Dennis Earl Bradford's downfall began with his attempted sexual assault on another woman in a bar, 7 years after Jennifer's abduction. This incident eerily mirrored his earlier crime, with choking and knife threats. His DNA, collected from this subsequent assault, was entered into the national database, ultimately matching evidence from Jennifer's case. Further investigation uncovered his 1990 driver's license, providing conclusive proof. Armed with this evidence, authorities secured a warrant and apprehended Dennis. At the press conference announcing Dennis's capture, Jennifer publicly expressed her gratitude. "First and foremost, I'd like to thank Detective Tim Cromie of the Dickinson Police Department and Special Agent Richard of the Federal Bureau of Investigation for their tireless efforts and unwavering dedication over the past year and a half. Their commitment to my case from day one never wavered." Jennifer's statement highlighted the significance of Detective Cromie's promise to seek justice and his unwavering faith in her determination. As Jennifer prepared for the trial, Dennis Earl Bradford, took his own life in his cell on the day the trial was scheduled to begin, thus avoiding the consequences of his heinous crimes. Jennifer's courageous journey, spanning nearly 2 decades, finally achieved closure, though not through the trial she had anticipated. Seeking closure, Jennifer visited Dennis Earl Bradford's grave, reading her victim impact statement aloud, wondering if he might hear her from beyond. In a poignant moment, she was bitten by a fire ant, eerily reminiscent of the ants that had tormented her in the field 19 years prior. To Jennifer, this was a sign, a symbol of resolve and resilience. Reflecting on her journey, she noted, "Throughout this ordeal, I've pursued 2 vital objectives. First, to identify and bring to justice the man who kidnapped, assaulted and attempted to murder me, ensuring he couldn't harm others. And second, to share my story with as many people as possible, inspiring fellow victims of violent crime to stand up and speak out." With pride and conviction, Jennifer declared, "Today I've achieved both goals. My case serves as a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of seeking justice, no matter how long or difficult the journey may be. To all victims of violent crime, I urge you, never lose hope. Find your voice, speak out, and know that with determination, you're capable of overcoming anything." Despite carrying lasting scars, Jennifer refused to let her traumatic experience define her. She chose to reclaim her life, embracing hope and resilience. Jennifer even pursued building a family, despite medical warnings that her assault-related injuries made conception highly unlikely. However, sharing her story brought unexpected hope. A doctor stepped forward, offering assistance, and Jennifer's dreams of motherhood became a reality. She married, and 2 years later, welcomed her first daughter, followed by a son. Today, Jennifer continues to amplify her voice as a passionate victim advocate, shattering the silence imposed upon her. Her courageous journey serves as testament to her unbreakable spirit. Even as a child, Jennifer demonstrated remarkable strength, outlasting the darkness that sought to claim her. Her story now inspires others to find their voices, rise above trauma, and reclaim their lives.
On October 30th, 1967, 2 curious girls in Montville, New Jersey, were exploring an upstairs bedroom when their gaze fell upon an unusual sight outside. Peering out the window, they spotted what appeared to be a mannequin reclining in the back seat of a parked car. Intrigued, the girls decided to investigate further. Venturing closer, they were met with a grim discovery: the lifeless body of a woman. Alarmed, they hastened to their neighbor's residence and alerted them to the tragic find. The neighbor promptly contacted the authorities. Upon arrival, police identified the deceased as 29-year-old Nancy Vogel, a married woman with 2 children residing merely 2 miles from the scene. Vogel was last seen alive 3 nights prior, having informed her husband of her plans to attend bingo at a local Catholic church. She had departed in her car, the very vehicle where her body was now discovered. Investigations revealed Vogel never arrived at the bingo night. Police found shopping bags within the car, leading them to suspect she had visited a nearby shopping center beforehand. Authorities theorized that this shopping trip likely marked the encounter with her killer, setting off a tragic chain of events. Authorities theorized Nancy Vogel's murder occurred the night she vanished, her body remaining in the parked car for 3 days. The gruesome scene revealed Vogel's nude body, with neatly folded clothing found beneath her. Her wrists were bound in front with thin nylon rope, indicating a deliberate and calculated act. The autopsy confirmed Vogel suffered sexual assault, followed by strangulation and fatal blunt force trauma, likely inflicted by the killer's fists. Despite initial efforts, the case stagnated, and after a week, police considered it cold. As years passed, the trail grew colder, and by 1977, the case was largely forgotten. Tragically, another shocking murder would soon shake the community. On December 15, 1977, Marianne Carr, a 26-year-old X-ray technician, was scheduled to meet her mother-in-law but never arrived. Carr's husband was away on business at the time. Marianne Carr's body bore disturbing signs of restraint and brutality. Handcuffs secured her wrists and ankles, while duct tape silenced her. Blunt force trauma marred her face, and a ligature had been used to strangle her. A vicious bite mark on her left breast added to the horror. Investigations led police to interview Carr's neighbors, yielding a surprising eyewitness account. One neighbor claimed to have seen Carr's husband in the parking lot on the night of the murder. However, authorities quickly cleared Carr's husband of suspicion, confirming his alibi out of town. As leads dwindled, Carr's case stagnated. Unbeknownst to investigators, a thread connected Carr's murder to Nancy Vogel's decade-old case, despite geographical and chronological divides. 9 months later, on September 23, 1978, another chilling incident unfolded. A woman was discovered in a drainage ditch behind Ledgewood Terrace, Carr's apartment building. Rescuers found the woman strangled, with bite marks on her breasts. Rushed to the hospital, medical staff managed to save her life. Though her memories were hazy, the survivor recalled drinking with a man at a New York City bar. She suspected she had been drugged. Investigations revealed the survivor had been administered a potent mix of 2 drugs, rendering her memories fuzzy. With limited information about the assailant or the attack, authorities faced a daunting challenge. 3 months later, Hackensack police responded to a motel disturbance. A sex worker reported being drugged and brutally beaten, bearing multiple bite marks on her breasts. The victim recounted meeting a client named Jim at a bar. Jim claimed to be a married computer operator with 3 children. After accepting a drink in the motel room, her recollections became hazy. She awoke in agony the next morning, with little recollection of the events. Despite this disturbing account, the investigation stalled. On December 2, 1980, Manhattan firefighters responded to a motel blaze. Upon extinguishing the flames, they discovered 2 lifeless bodies within. The gruesome scene revealed the victims had been murdered prior to the fire, with their hands and heads deliberately removed. The medical examiner's report confirmed the 2 women found in the Manhattan motel had endured torture before their deaths. Superficial cuts marred their breasts, hinting at a twisted and calculated cruelty. Over a month passed before one victim was identified as 22-year-old Dide Goodarzi, a sex worker and mother. Her companion remained nameless, and the severed hands and heads were never recovered. On May 4, 1980, a Hasbrook Heights motel housekeeper discovered a gruesome secret. While cleaning a room, she detected an unusual odor and lifted the mattress to reveal the lifeless body of 19-year-old Valerie Ann Street. Being a sex worker, Street had suffered hours of torture before her demise. Handcuffs secured her wrists, and duct tape muffled her screams. Bite marks scarred her breasts. Ligature strangulation was deemed the cause of death. A keen investigator linked Valerie Ann Street's murder to Mary Ann Carr's case, recalling the disturbing similarity in locations. Carr's body had been dumped beside the same motel's parking lot approximately 2.5 years prior. The circumstances of her death were horrific. On May 12, 1980, a severely injured cocktail waitress was discovered in a Teaneck, New Jersey parking lot. She had been drugged, brutally beaten, and bore bite marks on her breasts. Fortunately, she survived the ordeal. Just 10 days later, on May 22nd, firefighters responded to a New York City hotel blaze. Amidst the charred remains, they found the mutilated body of 25-year-old Jean Rayner, a Times Square sex worker. Bite marks covered her body, and her breasts had been gruesomely removed and placed on the headboard. Fingerprint analysis confirmed Rayner's identity. New York authorities linked this crime to the December 1980 murders of Dide Goodarzi and the unidentified Jane Doe, citing unsettling similarities in the crime scenes. Despite these connections, the killer's identity remained a mystery. On May 22, 1980, police returned to the same Hasbrook Heights motel where Mary Ann Carr and Valerie Ann Street's bodies were found. This time they responded to a disturbance call after a guest reported hearing a woman's screams. Upon arrival, officers approached the motel room, and a woman cautiously opened the door a crack. Upon detecting something amiss, officers gained entry to the room, prompting a sudden escape attempt by the suspect. The man, later identified as 34-year-old Richard Cottingham, fled through the back door, only to be apprehended by pursuing officers. Rescuers transported the victim, a sex worker, to the hospital, where medical staff treated her extensive injuries. Fortunately, she survived the hours-long torture. Investigations revealed Cottingham's seemingly ordinary life. Employed as a computer operator at Blue Shield of Greater New York, married and father to 3 children, residing in Lodi, New Jersey. However, Cottingham's arrest sparked suspicions of a darker nature. Police began exploring potential connections to the unsolved murders of Mary Ann Carr and Valerie Ann Street. The same motel where Carr and Street's bodies were discovered was also linked to Cottingham's latest crime. Moreover, the bite marks on the victims' breasts were consistent across all cases. A crucial eyewitness account placed Carr's husband at the crime scene, but this was later disproven due to his alibi. Interestingly, Cottingham bore a striking resemblance to Carr's husband. Further investigation uncovered another significant connection. Cottingham's girlfriend, who later became his wife, lived in the same apartment building as Carr. During questioning, Richard Cottingham denied any involvement in the motel room assault, claiming consensual activities. He also denied knowing Mary Ann Carr and Valerie Ann Street, and vehemently denied responsibility for their murders. However, investigators secured a search warrant for Cottingham's residence, uncovering a secretive basement room forbidden to his family. Within, detectives discovered disturbing trophies, jewelry taken from victims. Collaborative efforts between the Bergen County Police and New York Police Department yielded conclusive evidence linking Cottingham to the murders of D-Day Goodarzi, the Jane Doe, and Jean Rayner. Two survivors of his attacks positively identified Cottingham in a lineup. Consequently, Cottingham faced a multitude of charges, including 5 counts of murder for the deaths of Mary Ann Carr, D-Day Goodarzi, the Jane Doe, Valerie Ann Street, and Jean Rayner. Across 3 trials, Cottingham was convicted of all 5 murders, receiving sentences totaling 173 to 197 years, 20 years to life, and 75 years to life. Notably, Nancy Vogel's 1967 murder remained unconnected to Cottingham at the time of his arrest, leaving unanswered questions about the true extent of his criminal legacy. Throughout his incarceration, Richard Cottingham was periodically interviewed by police, leading to additional revelations. In 2010, Cottingham confessed to the 1967 murder of Nancy Vogel. He claimed to have encountered Vogel at a shopping center, and this admission resulted in another life sentence. Cottingham's willingness to confess continued, and in 2019, he acknowledged responsibility for 3 more heinous crimes. One of these confessions involved the 1968 disappearance of 13-year-old Jacqueline Harp, who vanished while walking home from band practice in Midland Park, New Jersey. Her body was discovered the following day in a nearby wooded area, bearing signs of strangulation via a leather strap she had been carrying. Notably, there was no evidence of sexual assault, but Jacqueline's face had been brutally beaten post-mortem. Another case Cottingham confessed to was the 1969 murder of 18-year-old Irene Blase from Pagoda, New Jersey. Irene was last seen conversing with a man in his 20s at the Hackensack bus station, having traveled from Pagoda. Her lifeless body was found floating in Saddlebrook's Saddle River, approximately 3 miles from the bus station, the very next morning. Irene Blase's lifeless body revealed a disturbing scenario. Fully clothed, no sexual assault, and strangled with her own crucifix chain. Facial wounds suggested a brutal post-mortem beating. 3 months later, 15-year-old Denise Falaska departed her Gloucester, New Jersey home on foot, deceiving her parents about her plans. The truth remained unknown. The next day, her body was discovered near a Saddlebrook cemetery, eerily close to Irene Blase's recovery site. Denise's autopsy mirrored Irene's: strangulation by a crucifix chain, post-mortem facial injuries indicating repeated blows, and no signs of sexual assault. Her clothing remained intact. These crimes, including Jacqueline Harp's murder, shared a common thread. All occurred in Bergen County. Notably, Richard Cottingham resided in Little Ferry, Bergen County at the time. Jacqueline Harp's murder occurred approximately 8 months after Cottingham's killing of Nancy Vogel, when Cottingham was 21. Despite residing in the county, Cottingham wasn't initially considered a suspect due to the differing brutality levels between his later crimes, which involved torture. In early 2020, following an extensive investigation, authorities announced their confidence in Cottingham's guilt and closed the cases related to Jacqueline Harp, Irene Blase, and Denise Falaska. However, these murders were part of a larger, disturbing pattern. The Bergen Strangler moniker was associated with a serial killer responsible for multiple teenage girl murders in Bergen County during the late 1960s. Alice Jean Eberhardt, an 18-year-old student nurse, was considered the Bergen Strangler's first victim. On September 24, 1965, Eberhardt left Hackensack Hospital at 2:30 p.m. and was later found dead. She resided with her parents in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Following her departure from the hospital, a severe thunderstorm swept through the area. Alice Jean Eberhardt's father returned home at 5:30 p.m. to find their residence in disarray and, tragically, his daughter's lifeless body. The crime scene indicated a fierce struggle, explaining the state of the house. Eberhardt's partial nudity suggested potential sexual motivations, but autopsy results revealed no evidence of assault. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, compounded by 61 post-mortem stab wounds. The weapons, 2 knives from the Eberhardt home, further hinted at a killer familiar with the residence. Investigations suggested the murderer knew Eberhardt, as there were no signs of forced entry or break-in, implying she had willingly admitted the killer. Additionally, the killer seemed aware of her schedule, exploiting the brief window when she was alone. Alice Jean Eberhardt's murder occurred nearly 2 years before Nancy Vogel's, Cottingham's first confirmed victim. At the time of Eberhardt's death, Cottingham was 19, residing in River Vale, Bergen County. 6 months after Alice Jean Eberhardt's tragic demise, another brutal murder shook Bergen County. On April 4, 1966, newlywed Janet Isparo was found dead in her Paramus apartment. Janet had been strangled with her hairband and stabbed post-mortem with scissors. Despite her near nudity, there was no evidence of sexual assault. Her husband last saw her alive 2 hours prior, when she left for a hardware store to buy cleaning supplies. The case remained unsolved until a new lead emerged nearly 10 months later. On January 24, 1967, Marianne Della Sala, 17, vanished after leaving work in Hackensack. 8 agonizing days passed before Marianne's semi-nude body was recovered from the Passaic River in Hawthorne, New Jersey. Autopsy results revealed strangulation and facial blunt force trauma, with no signs of sexual assault. The gruesome series of murders continued, with Jacqueline Harp, Irene Blaze, and Denise Falaska falling victim to strangulation within a span of 21 months. The cumulative evidence pointed to a single killer, later known as the Bergen Strangler, due to striking similarities. All 6 murders occurred within Bergen County, targeting young females with strikingly similar characteristics. The victims, ranging from 13 to 18 years old, were petite and had brown or brownish-red hair. 5 were strangled with personal items, while the first victim was stabbed with household knives, suggesting the killer didn't carry a weapon. Notably, none of the victims were sexually assaulted, despite an apparent sexual element to the crimes. Post-mortem mutilation was another disturbing commonality. Richard Cottingham's connection to Alice Jean Eberhardt, Janet Isparo, and Marianne Della Sala's murders remains unclear. Cottingham confessed to 3 Bergen County murders, specifically Jacqueline Harp, Irene Blaze, and Denise Falaska, but not these additional cases. This raises questions about his potential involvement and motivations for not confessing to these crimes, or if they were committed by another serial killer or separate perpetrators. It's worth noting that Cottingham's confessed crimes occurred after Nancy Vogel's murder, his first confirmed victim. Additionally, Cottingham is a prime suspect in other murders, including the 1974 double homicide of Mary Ann Pryor and Lorraine Kelly in Bergen County. On August 9, 1974, the 2 teenagers went to a mall in Paramus, New Jersey, and their nude bodies were found in a wooded area in Montville, New Jersey, 6 days later. They had been bound at the wrists and ankles, sexually assaulted and beaten, with ligature strangulation believed to be the cause of death. At the time of their murders, Richard Cottingham was 27 years old and living in Little Ferry. The double homicide's similarities to Cottingham's crimes, such as young female victims and geographic proximity to Bergen County, are striking. However, differences in modus operandi, including sexual assault and binding, also exist. The first murder marked the beginning of a series of crimes linked to Richard Cottingham, ultimately leading to his arrest and conviction. Investigators found a striking connection between these murders and a previous crime, the dumping of Nancy Vogel's body in Montville, Bergen County, 7 years earlier. In 1979, another gruesome murder occurred in Queens, New York. 19-year-old Helen Sykes, a sex worker from Times Square, was found brutally killed in a wooded area near LaGuardia Airport. Her body bore multiple stab wounds, a deeply slashed throat, and amputated legs, which were discovered 3 days later in a nearby alley. Significantly, Sykes's body had bite marks, a distinctive feature that would later aid investigators. Helen Sykes' murder preceded the killings of Didi Goodarzi and an unidentified Jane Doe by approximately 11 months. These two victims were part of a series of 5 murders for which Cottingham was ultimately convicted. Richard Cottingham, infamously known as the Torso Killer and the Times Square Ripper, remains incarcerated at Trenton State Prison in Trenton, New Jersey, serving life sentences for his heinous crimes. Although he confessed to the murders of Jacqueline Harp, Irene Blas, and Denise Falaska, he hasn't faced formal charges for these specific crimes, with the police considering these cases closed. Cottingham's willingness to confess to additional murders while in prison, to date, suggests that authorities may continue to engage with him to uncover potential connections to other unsolved crimes. His history of violence and the sheer number of confessions hint at a broader scope of criminal activity. As investigators persist in seeking closure for victims' families, Cottingham's imprisonment serves as a testament to the tireless efforts of law enforcement in bringing serial killers to justice. His case continues to captivate and horrify, serving as a reminder of the darker aspects of human nature.